Thanks for joining me back here for part 4 of this Hitchhiker to Heaven series that's answering the question, do you matter? Last time I talked about how God is asking us to put our addictions to death. And that helped explain what was going on in the old days when he asked the ancient Israelites to make animal sacrifices. The animals embodied the many worldly things that the Israelites struggled being attached to. So taking the life from the animal was the Israelites' way of saying to God that they wished to free themselves from their immoral addictions and they wanted to make up for their sins. In the same sense, you need to give up your worldly addictions. How can you reach the heavens if the world is holding you down? So finding fulfillment is as simple as giving up your ego, your pride, and all your selfishness. Youch. If that's the case, then do we even have a chance? And that's what we're going to talk about this time. I want to start by asking if you're one of the millions of people that set New Year's resolutions. I've heard that nearly half of America does, and if you are, then most likely you're owed some consolation since, according to a University of Scranton study, only 8% of people who make New Year's resolutions actually succeed in accomplishing their goal. And I usually don't make New Year's resolutions, but I've caved in this past year. I was finally frustrated enough with how much less and less I've been exercising as each year goes by. And I've tried many times throughout the year to reboot a routine, and I want it. I know it's good for me, yet I keep failing to do it. I have a bad habit of constantly convincing myself that other things are more important, like watching videos of funny animals or becoming exhausted from pillaging through my refrigerator. So once the turn of the new year came around, I saw it as a concrete landmark for a new start. I could turn the page. The laziness of last year could be put in the past and left there, and I could start keeping a new track record from January 1st. So I made it official. And I actually was confident enough to tell people my New Year's resolution was to exercise more regularly. And how are my results? Horrible. I made some changes. Then after a week, I was pretty much back to the same old, same old. I made it to the gym once so far this year, but that probably didn't count since it was closed. How many times have you found yourself in the same type of situation? You realize you need to change something significant in your life. You make it your goal, then you fail over and over and over. Procrastination, profanity, dishonesty, anger, you name it, and we all struggle with it in one degree or another, but not all struggles are the same. How many times have you promised yourself you'd spend less time working and more time on the really important things in your life, only to keep finding yourself buried in work? Or how many times have you told yourself you're going to lose weight and you're going to keep it off, only to eventually find yourself a few pounds heavier than where you started? Or how many times have you tried to quit an addiction, then later became worse off than before, binging because of your desperation and anxiety? Reflecting on all those times, you may think you're hopeless in ever conquering your demons. You may think you're alone. But there is hope, and God didn't leave us without a plan. So this brings us to the next part in explaining what God's saving act through Jesus Christ dying on a cross means to us and to the ancient Israelite culture that revealed it to the world. The ancient Israelites, the spiritual ancestors of Christianity, struggled just as much, if not worse, than any one of us today. If you caught my last talk in part 3, you'd at least know a small fraction of the addictions that their nation struggled with through their vast history. And that may have sounded a little scandalous to you, but in actuality, I put it very delicately and left out some of the much worse stuff. But in each generation, in each significant figure in the ancient Hebrew nations, they needed their own spiritual, quote, quote, New Year's resolution, so to speak. They needed some sort of landmark time and opportunity to start fresh. They had addictions they needed desperately to get over. So God, knowing their needs, set up that opportunity for them. God gave them a version of our January 1st. It's called the Pesach, or as it's more popularly known, the Passover. Here's what happened. 3,000 years ago, the Israelites found themselves held captive as slaves under the Egyptians. And God wanted to help them, so he made a deal with Israel. He said if they would show God that they wished their lives to be devoted to him, he would save them. The Israelites took God up on this offer, so they took the one thing that not only represented a significant amount of their livelihood, but also represented their immoral, worldly addictions, and they offered it up to God. And here's what that event looked like. This event can be found in chapter 12 of the book of Exodus. Each household obtained a year-old male lamb, and that goat or sheep had to be spotless, without blemish. On the 14th day of the month at twilight, all the people of Israel slaughtered the spotless lamb, and in doing so, they weren't allowed to break a single bone during the sacrifice. Once sacrificed, the lamb's blood was then spread on wooden doorposts of the Israelites' homes using a hyssop branch, and that formed as a physical sign to the community that they were part of God's covenant people. Through this sacrifice, God came to know his people, and he saved them from their slavery. The freed lives of God's people revolved around this saving Passover. Their entire yearly calendar began on this annual feast day. Then they ate that supper of the lamb with unleavened bread, and that meal, the Passover memorial, became a perpetual ordinance. It was a repeated feast, even after their freedom. Yeah, some of those details may seem a little obscure, so why am I going into depth on this seemingly macabre topic? Like I said, the lives of the Israelites for somewhere around 1,000 years revolved around the Passover feast and the practice of animal sacrifice. So if you want to understand things from the perspective of the ancient Israelites, you absolutely must understand how fundamental this was to their worldview. I mean, it got to the point where the temple priests, who were called the Levites, they were required to offer at least 2 of these animal sacrifices each day. That's like saying your city requires at least 2 nice cars be offered up to God via the town bonfire pile each day. What I want you to realize is Israel's story is our story. It's time for your Passover. It's time for your spiritual New Year. It's time for you to take the things that hold you so desperately to this world and put them to death. I know this is way easier said than done, but look at the level of detail God gave to the ancient Israelites to help them overcome their struggles. God gave his people a step-by-step plan to guide them to freedom. So let's use it. The Alcoholics Anonymous program was founded as a Christian support organization, but it may as well have been called the Addictions Anonymous because you can use it to deal with any of your struggles. And I'd argue the reason for its success is it's based off the same guidance God gave the ancient Israelites at the Passover. So here's 6 steps of practical, godly advice that's used by the AA program to help you put your struggles to death. Number 1, face your demon. Admit that you have a problem. Name what your struggle is. Put it out in the open that I'm addicted to smoking, or I'm addicted to junk food, or I'm addicted to losing my temper. Admit to yourself what you're doing is hurtful to yourself and to others and to God, and say it out loud to yourself. Say, when I waste money on selfish, frivolous things, I'm stealing from people with so much more need than me and so much less opportunities. Do this with whatever your struggle is and however it affects your entire world. It's all the more powerful if you can write this down somewhere that you can look at it on a daily basis. Number 2, use the heavens on earth. Recognize your success is possible through God. All power comes from God. Use the strength he offers you on a daily basis, every day. When you most need help, and especially when you're doing well and not thinking of your struggle, ask him to better show you ways to defeat your addictions. Make a prayer. If you'd like a suggestion, memorize and repeat this Bible verse from the book of Micah, chapter 7, verse 8. Do not gloat over me, my enemies, for though I fall, I will rise again. Though I sit in darkness, the Lord will be my light. Number 3 is to call for backup. You need to get experienced guidance. And this may actually be the hardest step on your road to freedom because it requires you to make yourself vulnerable. This is arguably the greatest shortcut in overcoming your struggles. This is your spiritual workout partner. You may be able to lift 100 pounds by yourself, but get someone else to help you and to keep you accountable and focused. You'll lift weight you've never thought possible, and in a time frame you never imagined could be so short. So talk with your friend about the breakdown, play by play, of what most leads to your struggle. Get into the nitty-gritty of it. For example, if your struggle is with an addiction to porn, list this. Where are you looking at it? Is it in private, or are there people and places that provoke you? What device or devices are your accomplices? Or what stores or websites are your dealers? And so on. Be specific. Number 4 is to let forgiveness reign. Make amends. You need to remove yourself from being in the way of your own recovery. If you don't forgive yourself for what you've done, then your view of God is too small. If you get injured, yes, scars will always be there. God wants you to learn from your mistakes, but nonetheless, every wound can be healed by God. So who are you to not forgive yourself when He's so ready and willing? Think about what it says in the 86th chapter of Psalms in verse 5. For you, Lord, are good and ready to forgive, and plentiful in mercy to everyone that calls upon you. Further, it's time to try and right some of the wrongs that you've done to others around you. If possible, ask for forgiveness from the people that have been affected by your mistakes. Be prepared that they may not give you forgiveness, but also be prepared for your burdens to be lightened. Number 5 is to walk a different path, live a new way of life. It's easy to not reach a goal when either that goal is rather vague or you don't have a plan of small steps to get you there. So make your goal measurable by changing something like, I'm going to exercise more, to I will go to the gym at least 2 days every week. It also helps tremendously if you can take your long-term goal and break it into smaller goals, little milestone goals. Because serious addictions require serious work. Turn a goal like, I'm going to entirely quit smoking into, rather than smoking 10 cigarettes a day, I will only smoke 9 cigarettes a day for the next 2 weeks. Then as you reach your milestone, you advance to the next level of reaching your long-term goal by setting a new, slightly more challenging short-term goal. And the last step is number 6, which is give as to receive. Help others that have the same struggle. This is where I need to remind you that you're designed to live outwardly, to be selfless. And one of the best ways to guarantee you'll conquer your demons is to embrace the way God made you and to help someone else who has the same struggle. Just like in Luke chapter 6:38 says, give and it will be given to you. So there you have it. Those are the 6 steps that I'd recommend using to help you get over your worldly addictions. Stay motivated, and I'll be praying for you. Thanks for listening, and join me next time as everything from parts 1 to 4 come to their grand fulfillment in part 5. This is the Hitchhiker to Heaven series. I'm here to give you a lift.